1, 2, 3, 4. Kumah, 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 Elohim. 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 שופט הארץ, שופט הארץ, שופטה, שופטה, שופט הארץ, שופטה, שופטה, שופט הארץ. מקום, 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 מקום האלוהים. מקום, 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 מקום האלוהים. שופט הארץ, שופט הארץ, שופטה, שופטה, שופט הארץ, שופטה, שופטה, שופט הארץ. שופט הארץ, שופט הארץ, שופטה, שופטה, שופט הארץ, שופטה, שופטה, שופט הארץ. שופט הארץ, שופט הארץ, שופטה, שופטה, שופט הארץ, שופטה, שופטה, שופט הארץ.
You know, I didn't get on to the
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Nice to be with you again here for our fourth week of the Kumah Festival. We have some a pretty wonderful lineup for tonight. Maia is going to lead the discussion. And then we have Dava and Sarah, two dancers who are going to be both dancing and speaking, and Frank London, who's going to be trumpeting. I think it's going to be a beautiful evening. So I just want to say a word of welcome before we get into Shabbat blessings. That will be our opening. I want to say a word about how Shabbat is political, since this this festival of ours is devoted to faith, art, politics. So how is Shabbat a radical political act? That's the question I've been contemplating leading up to today. So Shabbat is designed in a way as an equalizer. It's a great equalizer. In the Ten Commandments, when the 10 commandments are given at Mount Sinai, this is what it says. I'll quote. On it, that is on Shabbat, you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your ox, your donkey, or any of your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns, so that your male and female servants may rest as you do. That's the purpose of Shabbat, is to equalize between people and their male and female servants, is the language of the Torah, is to equalize all of us, including the animals, to put us all within the same realm, the same level of importance. Shabbat is designed to equalize all the members of our society, but it's also, in a way, designed to do the same thing to ourselves, to kind of equalize all the different pieces of our identities, to kind of bring every different piece of us together, that none is more important than the other. We're all one whole. And there's a kind of mechanism through which this is supposed to happen. And that mechanism is our body. Shabbat can be seen in large part as the day of the body. At Havdalah, the ceremony that ends Shabbat, we work all of our senses. We smell something, we taste something, we hear something, we feel something. That's supposed to tell us something about the experience we're supposed to be going through on Shabbat. And the truth is that it's not only supposed to be just feeling, but it's actually supposed to be the pleasure of feeling all these things. There's a Hebrew word called oneg. You guys can try saying that, oneg. Oneg Shabbat, the pleasure of Shabbat. There's actually a ceremony that we do, or a kind of get together, a cultural kind of get together that is done towards the end of Shabbat, called Oneg Shabbat, in which you eat and drink and be merry and tell stories and sing, those kinds of things. So Oneg Shabbat is a pleasure, is a big one on Shabbat. So it kind of asks us a certain question I'm going to ask you guys to contemplate. How much pleasure do you think you deserve? How much pleasure do you think you deserve? How often do you think you deserve a massage, for example? How often do you think you deserve to experience sexual pleasure? How often do you think you deserve to eat a decadent meal? Yeah, these are real questions. To me, these are real questions that I contemplate sometimes. How often do we deserve to smell flowers, or to sing, or to hear other people singing, to really take time to, just allow our body to enjoy itself? So our tradition, the answer in our tradition is at least once a week on Shabbat. That's the day that we have to enjoy pleasure, to care for our bodies, to be decadent with our bodies, to experience pleasure, to make our body whole and loved. And that's another way to talk about Shabbat, is to love our bodies, to self-love. Self-love, which is probably the source of any love we experience. If we can love ourselves, then we might be able to love others. If we can love ourselves, we might be able to do things for other people. And that's where this becomes political. Because if we can honor our body, hopefully it can lead us to honor any body. It will allow us to honor those around us and to work for the wholeness of the body of the human family. to work on this great equalization. Justice, the work of justice. The work of justice begins with being good to ourselves. I think we know that. It kind of starts, but I'm not sure we know that it actually might start from the body. The work of justice starts from the body, and then it works outwards into the world through our actions. So today, when we are talking about dance and the body as this incredible instrument, that's the Shabbat action that we're taking, especially on a week like just past, in which justice and the struggle towards justice and the human body were so present in our minds and hearts. So with that, I'd like to invite you all, if you have Shabbat candles, to pull them out. And I would like to invite Pam Levine and Marty Humans and Sylvia Stein. We have three blessings that we're going to do. We have the Shabbat candles, and we have the Shabbat wine. We're gonna kick off with wine so that we can all drink, and then we're gonna get to the Omer blessing. So Marty and Pam, bevakasha. We'll start with the candles and go on to the wine.
Thank you. I'm just going to, right before we start, say that I'm cavelling a little bit, and I just want everyone to know that Sarah Chen is our niece, my niece, and I'm so excited to share her with you. She's awesome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Amen.
Should we do the wine?
Yes, we're gonna go straight into the wine.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher borei pri hagofen.
Amen. L'chaim. Beautiful. Thank you, Marty and Pam. And Sylvia, I'm going to turn it over to you. We are in preparation here for being worthy of receiving the Torah, and therefore we are counting up all the way until the 50th day, which will be our last day of the festival. Sfirat HaOmer. Bevakasha, Sylvia.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedeshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu al sfirat haomer. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctifies us with mitzvot and commands us concerning the counting of the Omer.
Amen. Today, Hayom 27 ימים, שהם 3 שבועות ו6 ימים לעומר. Today are 7 and 20 days, which are 3 weeks and 6 days to the Omer. We're past the halfway point. Okay, thank you very much, Sylvia. Thank you very much, Marty. Thank you, Pam. Toda rabah, yishar koach. And I'd like to introduce you to Frank London. I think you all probably know him at this stage. He was with us at High Holidays, and Frank, you want to say a word about what you're going to trumpet, or you want to just trumpet?
Good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom to everyone. And this is just an opening little meditative moment to get us into the spirit of Shabbat. And thank you all for having me again with your community.
Toda rabah. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Frank. That was Shabbat coming in, I think. I'd like to introduce you now to new Shul member Maia Wechsler, who curated this evening and will be moderating our discussion and our performances for tonight.
Thank you, Misha. Thank you, Misha, for that wonderful introduction, connecting us to the body for Shabbat, to justice, to the body. How amazingly in sync with this evening of dance. Thank you, Frank, for that beautiful music, the music that moves us, sways us deeply inside, for the breath. And Shabbat Shalom to everybody, and thank you all so much for being here. It is truly an honor for me tonight to curate this evening of dance for the Kumah Festival. I'm delighted to introduce you to two wonderful dance artists who I have had the privilege of knowing over many years, Sarah Chen and Davalois Firon. Both Sarah and Dava create expansively within and through the three realms of our festival: art, faith, and activism. I'd like to open the evening by quoting philosopher and activist Cornel West on art. Art, he says, constitutes the very source from whence we come. It's the very means by which we preserve our sanity and dignity. This quote for me exemplifies the work of Sarah and Dava. Art is source, art is sanity, and art is dignity. I'll begin with Dava. Dava Firon, that's Dava for short, Davalois. Dava Firon is a critically acclaimed and award-winning choreographer, dancer, and educator born in Jamaica and raised in the Bronx. Can we bring Dava on? Is she there? In 2016, after performing around the world for 12 years with the Stephen Petronio Company, Dava founded her own company, the Davalois Fearon Dance, to push artistic and social boundaries, confront difficult issues, and prompt contemplation. Dava's original work is often accompanied by audience discussion and calls to action. In New York, her work has been performed at the Joyce Theater, the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts at Lincoln Center, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and Broadway's New Victory Theater, among other venues. Yay, there she is. Hey, Dava. Tonight, we'll preview and talk with her about her work For C.J. The work is called For C.J., which is dedicated to her nephew, C.J., who was the victim of a fatal asthma attack in 2017 at the age of 20. The work explores the themes of loss and remembrance and is accompanied by an initiative to address systemic, medical, and environmental negligence, issues that the pandemic has made so dramatically, painfully, tragically clear to us all. Dava often collaborates with her husband, Mike McGinnis, saxophonist, clarinetist. He couldn't be composer. He couldn't be here with us tonight, but the invitation to all of you is to join us on the last day of the Kumah Festival for a live performance with Dava and Mike at Pier 65, and I'll give some more information on that later. Yay, there's Sarah. Our other artist, as you all learned, who is Pam's niece, Pam and Marty's niece. But Sarah's an artist and somebody whose work I followed for several years now. And Sarah describes her approach to performance as a way of revealing more of the self. And she describes herself as a mixed race, pansexual, Jewish, interfaith raised, half Chinese granddaughter of immigrants, woman of color. As an artist, Sarah calls herself an improviser, with improvisation a means to build dialogue across disciplines, to be a fully present whole person, a model by which she aspires to live. Just a note, unfortunately for us, as you know now, she's a part of our extended New Shul family. She's not just the niece of Pam, but she's been a part of our community for several years. Tonight, we will begin with Sarah, who is going to create a live Zoom improvisational work for us. That means that this is not a set piece. She has never performed this work before. She will create as we watch. The dance will be set in, with, and around her Shabbat table. This is Sarah in her solo practice. Thank you, Sarah. This is Sarah in her solo practice, a space, she says, where one meets, confronts, and fights oneself again and again. Sarah will be controlling all the cinematic design and sound elements for the evening, which you will see. She dances in her own apartment, a space that she and so many other dancers have repurposed as studios and performance spaces during the pandemic. Welcome, Sarah. I invite you to unmute yourself. And, you know, I know we talked about this. Most artists don't want to say too much before performing, but I invite you to please speak with us a little bit if you'd like.
Awesome. I wrote a little thing. Thank you, Maya and Misha, for those beautiful introductions. As Maya just said, I feel conflicted about introducing my own work, just as I feel conflicted about that sentence listing out all of my minority identities that was in Maya's intro. I want the work to speak for itself. And anyways, you'll see I often speak in the work. But of course, I also want to invite you in. I don't want to tell you what it's going to be about, because I know that we'll create the meaning together as the work goes. As Maya already alluded to, I will say the piece, which is called This Time, is an improvisation score created as a container so that I can bring the realities of making art during this time, the pandemic, into the room, and hopefully bring you all into my room as well. It has been performed before, but this is, as I've been saying, the Shabbat edition. The tools that I'll be using, the improvisation on Zoom, were developed through research I did with an international collective I'm a part of called Other Side Collective, with 2 O's or an infinity sign to make that other side. And we've been improvising on Zoom since March of last year. I would love to talk more about this after the piece. The only other thing to know is the music you might hear in the piece is Neutral Objects by Yaz Lancaster, and an untitled piece by Mirko Lancerotto, who is part of Other Side Collective.
I'm a disembodied voice right now. This is Maya. And if everybody could turn off their video just for the time of the performance, and then join us back on video when Sarah's done performing. Thank you so much, and thank you, Sarah.
I'm just gonna do the quickest sound check so that nothing goes wrong one last time. Hopefully that didn't hurt anyone's ears, but if anyone could just say that they heard that, that would help me out.
I heard it.
Lovely, thank you. All right, I'll be back in 1 second. Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to my table. I put a chair for you in case you come. I really wish you could come. We already did all the prayers, but we didn't do one, and it's my favorite one. I was trying to think about Shabbat things that I know, and I don't know so many. But in college, I was part of a lovely group of Reformed Jews, and we did a prayer over the bread where we'd hold hands. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise and fall together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. I love bread. Oh, I wish you could taste it. I wish you could smell it. I wish you could smell the candles. You know, that little burning smell. Mm. I have so many thoughts, so many questions about Shabbat. Where's the one? I wish you were here. I wish we hadn't done 2 Zooms Passovers. I wish you were here. I hope you eat something delicious tonight.
Sarah, are you there?
Yes.
Hi. Bravo. Everybody, please feel free to come back on video. Sarah, thank you for such a beautiful reverie. What a treat for all of us. Just exquisite, fascinating. By the way, we're going to do a short Q&A with our community at the end. So if you have questions for Sarah and certainly also for Dava coming up, please feel free to put them in the chat. But I'll start out by asking you, chatting with you myself, Sarah. You've said that spaces and places are sacred to you. It clearly comes across in your dance tonight, and that you find yourself in deep relationship with them, and that you tend to relate to objects and architecture in an animistic way, as though everything has its own spirit. Can you talk to us tonight about the space and the architecture and how your improv impacts your relationship with that?
Yeah. I think as an improviser, the whole point of what you're doing is to respond to everything that is around you and inside of you and happening. So one of the first things to train is to see the space with really clear detail. An exercise we would do is like calling out tiny little details, like the leaf of my succulent connected to the candle holders that Pam gave me. And so that way of seeing kind of opens your perspective as an artist, and then allows you to be able to share that. And then me, as the kind of mover I am, very grounded, very physical, very playful, I like to climb on everything. I limited myself to not climbing on the Shabbat table with fire. And I would say the third piece of that is during the pandemic, you know, we were all alone in our spaces, and I started I'd always made duets with objects. I did that like right out of college, but I went back to that research and making, and film also is kind of conducive to that, which is what Zoom ends up being. So I ended up kind of duetting with everything in my dance studio. There's a speaker over there that I've cuddled with, and just kind of anything I could find. There's like an electrical cord on the roof. So yeah, it's definitely been a part of my work to invite animate and inanimate partners into the work.
You describe yourself as someone who often code switches between cultures, faiths, and disciplines, saying that learning from difference is a way forward for you. Can you talk to us about code switching, what it is, and how it moves you forward?
I don't know if I have a good academic definition of code switching, but it's what you do when you're in one environment and you adapt to the kind of norms and speech patterns and expectations of that environment, and then you go to another and you can do that there. And so obviously as a mixed race person, that's something I kind of grew up with. And also just, I mean, everybody has it, right? If you lived in one town and moved to New York City, there's maybe two cultures there for you to grasp. And sometimes it's a real burden, right, to be translating between communities. And sometimes it's this lovely privilege to be able to chameleon between different places and kind of be able to enter them and be able to learn from them. And I have a lot of comfort in kind of being one of something in a place, which happens kind of naturally since the unique, I don't know, matrix of my identities is unlikely to be a pure gathering at any one time. Well, that's code switching. What was the question about it?
Well, I'm interested to know, well, how it's a way forward for you in your art.
I mean, I would say, one thing is part of why I do improvisation, and my insistence on that is I don't want to be someone else when I'm doing my art. I want to be me. That's why I do solo work. I did dance in some companies, and I eventually kind of chafed at that and didn't fit in playing roles of somebody else's story. And there wasn't going to be a role for list that long sentence of identities exactly for me. So I would say one thing is I really embrace and I love dancers who are speaking for themselves rather than interpreting someone else's choreography. And that's the kind of work that I usually do myself and that I also produce and try to promote and sometimes teach. I thought I had another thought, but I lost it.
That's a great thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just a little bit more about you personally, because when we had a conversation, you had told me that you just recently quit your corporate job. What was what you referred to as your contract with corporate capitalism, which for many years supported your work as an artist, but you said that the pandemic undid the contracts in your mind, allowing you to make sure, the pandemic allowed you to make sure that you were living the life you wanted. You even talked about returning to your 20-year-old self in this search. And I'm just wondering, what are those contracts? What are the contracts of living as an artist?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that'd be interesting to hear from Dava, because I know that her experience must be different. But everybody has to find their way to survive in an art form that really doesn't compensate you enough to live most of the time. So my solution was to work part-time in UX research, which is a tech job. So very highly paid in the best industry for money. And I did that for 9, almost 10 years. And I basically said, you know, I'm working that job and then I'm taking that money and giving myself grants from Sarah Chen Dance Foundation to Sarah Chen. Because the dance world is also extremely competitive for the funding and the opportunities that are there. And improvisation, I would say, even worse for getting that kind of funding, because it's very hard to sell a product when you're saying the product, I can't guarantee what it'll be tonight. So yeah, that's what I was doing. And the pandemic really I'd been wanting to quit my job for a while. And then it was like, what am I doing? This table, this area where the Shabbat stuff is, became my desk for tech. I had like a big monitor and another laptop. And I just, something about the pandemic gave me the courage to quit, because what was I sitting down and working for when there was no dance, right? Because the industry kind of collapsed this year. And yes, I was dancing on my roof, and yes, I was dancing in this living room, but you know, I didn't have to fund trips, for example, to go work with my collective that I mentioned. They're all in Europe. Oh, that was the code switching thing, working with artists from other places. So yeah, one of the things that I did is I have a rooftop space, and normally it's a venue. It would have audience come, and I curate improvised performance in this kind of evening party, rooftop party format. And that couldn't happen anymore. We only have one bathroom in our house, private home. There's no way we could make COVID regulations with that. And I was so sad about it. And I've always had like a little garden. I had like, you know, some tomatoes, some herbs, but I just went all in on the garden instead of an audience. And I had all these plants, and I really started kind of gardening. And that's what I kind of quit my job for. We'll see where it goes, but I'm currently apprenticing on a farm at Governor's Island called Earth Matter. And I am expanding that rooftop garden here as my own little laboratory, and trying to kind of find my way into food systems, ethical food systems, as hopefully my next day job slot. We'll see. I think there's a big practical question of whether this will be a beautiful sabbatical, and I've got some support from my partner, or whether it'll really be a life change. But I believe in experimenting. I really want people to be able to create the lives that they want to live. So I'm trying this new configuration, and we'll see.
You're committing to the improvisation of whatever comes next.
Exactly.
And I hope that when you can once again invite people to your roof for performance, we will all be invited up there.
Yes,
and
please.
It was wonderful to watch you dance tonight. And I wish we could talk longer, but we have just a short amount of time for the evening. And Sarah, thank you so much. We're going to bring you back.
Yep.
But for the moment, thank you. And we'll pivot now to Dava. Hey, Dava.
I just want to say, Sarah, excellent, beautiful, and so amazing to watch.
Thank you so much.
Dava, it's really an honor to have you here. Dava is a dance artist with a rich, multifaceted career, as you heard in my brief intro this evening. And as we establish this connection between Sarah and the community, we're all sort of at one degree of separation. I just wanted to point a couple things out that I was just loving in once this evening came together, seeing how, all the connecting threads between us. So Dava's collaborator, musical collaborator, husband, Mike McGinnis, who I spoke of earlier, has played several times with Frank London, who opened our evening. So we have that connection. And Dava danced for 12 years for the Stephen Petronio Company. As I mentioned, she was his lead dancer in a very close relationship with Stephen. And Stephen famously was the first male dancer ever with the Trisha Brown Company. And our executive director of the new Shul, Susan Myers, who is at the controls behind this entire evening, was the executive director, used to be the executive director of the Trisha Brown Company. So I just point this out because there's a reason why we're all here. We're all connected, and I just love that. And now to turn back to you specifically. Tonight, Dava, we're going to focus on one particular work of yours, For C.J. As I mentioned, the piece explores the themes of loss and remembrance and what you call the entanglement of medical and environmental racial disparities that resulted in his death. There's such an urgency about these themes today with the higher death rates from COVID in communities of color and the murder of George Floyd from asphyxiation, the call of I can't breathe. Before we watch the 5-minute excerpt, because David will not dance live for us tonight, we're going to see a 5-minute excerpt from For C.J, which is a 45-minute piece. The entire piece is on the Kumah website, so please take advantage of that and watch the entire 45 minutes. But tonight we're going to watch a 5-minute excerpt. And I'd like to invite you, David, before we show the clip, for you to talk to us a little, to set the scene for the clip, to tell us who we're seeing, who these characters are, what's happening in this excerpt.
Sure. So hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. And I am so excited that I get this opportunity to share this work, which is really important to me and very near and dear to my heart. So at the beginning of every performance, I invite everyone to think about a loved one that has passed away. I hand out little fabric that is kind of like in the shape of a leaf and Sharpies. And I kind of allow folks to kind of write a letter. Like if you had an opportunity to write, something to that loved one, what would you write? And I offer it as an opportunity to kind of sit with that idea of loss, that idea of remembrance. And we don't get a lot of time to grieve in public, to grieve with one another outside of like the funeral, right? And then we're supposed to bury our loved one, moved on, and not think about it again, or think about it in private, or not share that moment with people in society. So that's how I start the work, is I just allow a moment for everybody to kind of do that for themselves. And then I invite folks to, if they don't want to write, they can just think about it, hold it, and set that intention to that fabric. And then I go around with what I call roots, which are just kind of look like ropes that I allow folks to tie those leaves on. And that plays a role in the piece as the piece goes on. And it opens up with kind of foreshadowing what the audience will see a little bit later on in the work, which is the trio where the 3 characters interact and touch for the first time. So the first character that you'll see is Michaela Ware, and she's the one who's in the center doing the solo, and she kind of tells or takes on the ideas around the entanglement of medical and environmental racism. And I use her to kind of tell C.J.'s story in a very abstract way. Then we have Morgan Anderson, who's dressed in white. It is actually a doctor's coat that she wears backwards. So she kind of is the character that's playing the medical environment. And then we have Jerry Rutherford, who is sitting, when you see with the clip, she's going to be sitting down. And she embodies the environment. So the environment is multifaceted in the sense that it's the people that we are around, it's the community that we are in, and it's the trees, the grass, the air, the stores, the homes, just everything that embodies kind of like the environment that I understand CJ was a part of and also I grew up in. So that's kind of the Jerry Rutherford's character. And then we have the live musicians. So the live musicians are on the peripheral. You probably won't see them in the actual performance that we're gonna watch. They kind of are creating this outside universe. They're almost like entities or spirits that are creating this atmosphere, and actually I do make a quick little appearance in the work, but I don't think you're going to see it in this clip. And so I'm kind of like one of them. I'm a part of this outside force that's creating this world that the dancers are existing in.
Thank you so much. I just want to let everybody know that the performance, the excerpt that we're about to see was from a performance that was filmed at Brick Arts in Brooklyn on March 5th, 2020. So right before the shutdown. You just got it in like that. It was filmed, and just so that you know where the performance is from. And is there anything?
The lockdown.
What did you say?
I think maybe like 4 or 5 days later after that show, like, lockdown.
So should we go to the clip? And once again, if you don't mind, everybody, if you could just turn your video off. It's just easier to see the clip and come back after that. Thanks, Dava.
Thank you.
I apologize, everybody. We are having a challenge technically with the piece. Of course, we teched it and ran it, and it was great, and not so much right now. So I have made the decision. I don't want to show the piece this way because I think it's doing a disservice to the dance. So I apologize. But I do feel very comforted by the fact that if you go to the new Shul website and you click on Kumah Festival, Dava has given us a wonderful page of information and the possibility of seeing the entire dance, which I highly recommend. So we're just gonna move on, and I'm gonna welcome Dava back, and we'll talk about the work prior to your seeing it. And we will also send out this clip to everybody so that you can view the clip. And yeah, so that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this. So Dava, so the invitation, I guess, is to move a little bit more for us now. I think where I'm going with this is, you and I talked about what it is to translate story, emotion, character, intention into movement. And since we weren't able to really see the piece tonight, I'd like to ask you, I always thought of that character who we saw, who's very tall and in the center, perhaps mistakenly so, as C.J, in fact. And then the white medical coat person and the medical industry. And if you could just take those two characters for us and talk about, what is some of the movement vocabulary for them and where that comes from from you.
Yes, yeah. So I guess like the reason why I hesitate to say that the tall character that we see is CJ verbatim is because it's more like what Michaela embodies is it's more like my story, to be honest. It's more like how I was feeling around knowing and hearing and experiencing a loss that was unnecessary, right? And so being that I knew why we lost him, right? So I can identify. I also have asthma. I grew up in the same environment he grew up in. I was just lucky enough not to have a severe case of asthma, so I didn't have to deal with the same exact things, and I wasn't around the same types of triggers. So, it's inspired by his story. It's inspired by wanting to create this sense of awareness, and just the frustration and the walking around and the feeling trapped, right? So just putting myself in his shoes in the sense that like, I know what it's like to be that identity and being trapped. So so the solo was made in this little triangle. So she traverses that triangle over and over again, and she tries to have a different outcome each and every time. So she comes into contact with the doctor, and the doctor is like, I have so much to do. I have so much to do. I don't know if you've ever been to a doctor's office where they're like, okay, how you doing? What's your name? This is this, da, da, da. And then you're out. Like doctor, you're there for about 2 hours, but then you may get like 4 or 5 minutes with the actual doctor. People from my community don't necessarily have a primary care doctor that knows their name, knows their family, has a really deep tie with their personal care doctor. It's like next, this kind of like thing where it's like I almost can't fault the doctors for kind of being in this state of hysteria because they're just dealing with so many people and also asthma is dealt with in that way. It's always an emergency. Like that's the main care that people with asthma of his identity are receiving, is just constant hysteria. And what happened with him particularly was that he went into the emergency room. They gave him what they thought they needed to give him. He left. He had a relapse. He came back, and they were just like, "What are you here for?" Like, you know, we just have. They're busy. They have things to do. And he, that whole lack of being able to advocate for yourself in the face of white supremacy is very exhausting. And so he gave up. He was just like, okay, all right, fine. Yeah, I'm fine. You're right. I just got discharged 2 days ago. So yeah, you're busy. I get it. My life doesn't matter. I'll go home. I'll try and tough it out. 3 days later, he was back in the emergency room, but he didn't make it out. So it's that idea of like the hysteria that, you know, person who's supposed to care for you, but they can't. They're in a situation where they can't for multiple reasons. They're under-resourced, they're understaffed, they're underpaid, they're in a, you know, a community where they view the people who are coming in as either a bother or they are over exaggerating. You know, so there's always a constant like, oh, well, maybe you're just like someone who's you're like hooked on drugs. I don't know if you all heard about most recently the doctor, a Black woman who died of COVID because people were suspicious that she was a junkie and that she didn't need pain medicine. So when you're dealing with someone who's just kind of like doing that to you and you're in need, it is hard. It's hard to advocate for yourself. That kind of like person who's supposed to be caring for, but is just in this hysteria was what that character was. That was Morgan. That was her kind of like frustration with the situation because she's in a really messed up situation. And then here's this person who's bothering her.
We see her in her coat. We see her in just the shaking of the hands. Is that's what you were just doing?
She's just kind of like, you know, because if I don't know if you've ever been to, you know, a hospital like that that's under resourced. It's a city hospital dealing with mainly people of color, mainly Medicaid people. They're running ragged. They're running ragged. And they are constantly like, okay, I need this, I need that, I need this, I need that. Who's next? What's the chart? They're not comfortable, relaxed people for multiple reasons.
Yeah. And then the other character who I mistook as CJ, but you said is almost more you. There's this, since we didn't see it, can you show us a little bit of this, you know, this sort of cleaning off, this pushing off, this getting off, this, what is this?
Yeah, so
maybe demonstrate a little bit for us since we didn't get to see it.
Yeah. So it was stopping a little bit, but it was her kind of like shaking. Okay, so let me back up. That movement is an improv score that I told her to do. And the score is you start upstage. So I'll you know, kind of just show you. And in Black culture, it's this like brush your shoulders off. I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but like in Black culture, that's a kind of like saying like, oh, you're fine, brush your shoulders off, like, oh, I'm good, I got this, like, I'm fine. It's a way to cope with the fact that society kind of just doesn't see you as human. But that type of brushing your shoulders off and just being like, I'm good, how detrimental is that to you? That's another type of hysteria. That's another type of crazy. So I took that idea of like, okay, so what does it mean to brush your shoulders off and say, oh, I'm good. And just take that into some type of improv where you're just brushing everything off and going kind of nuts, but traversing from all the way upstage to then being stuck. So that's what we saw, was her coming up and being stuck and just looking at her options of like, okay, stage left, I'm a part of this community and they can't really help me. And that's where Injiri is, and she's sitting on the ground. And then stage right, there's the doctor, there's white society. They also can't help me. So it's her being stuck in this loop. And she walks around and has an interaction with Morgan, and then she walks and has Injiri just kind of is on the ground and is hiding her eyes and is just unable to support her, unable to do anything, because Injiri's going through her own stuff. She's also dealing with the same thing that Michaela's going through, so she's unable to help. So it's her constantly traversing and saying, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, and then actually, no, I'm not. And then she walks around, comes back, and she hovers. Where we stopped it was her hovering over Injiri and having a moment with Injiri, and Injiri is basically indifferent to
And
her.
she represents the environment you said to us earlier.
She represents the Black environment. So very specific to where someone like myself and someone like CJ grew up. So the people that we are around that, for lack of a better word, don't have the tools to help us deal with what's happening when we leave our community and encounter something like the medical industry that doesn't serve us, right? So how much help can Injiri give her when Injiri is going through the same crises? And whether that's, I think about myself and the maternal death rate, and how I was, the same year he passed was the same year I got pregnant. And I was thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm interacting with that same medical industry. And so how much of a help can I be to him about advocacy where I could barely advocate for myself? So it's kind of, that's Injiri's character, is that she's in this weird place of limbo where she's it's not that she's blind, she's doing this thing, but it's more like she can't see what's happening with the central character, or she has to, for self-preservation, look forward and not engage, and or engage with the white character because that's survival. She's in survival mode. So that's her kind of like slow moving on the floor that we didn't get to see.
I mean, clearly this is this piece comes from within you, from so deep in your gut and your experience and your life, and you demonstrated that movement so beautifully. It was really a treat, I know, for all of us to be just watching you move, and maybe you wouldn't have moved this much if we'd seen more of the clip. So I'm just wondering, we unfortunately are running late on time, but we will send, the Shul will send everybody the full work, if that's okay with you, Dava, to give everybody a chance to see it. It's on the website, but and the 5-minute clip that we're going to show. And I think you'll recognize in that clip a lot of what Dave explained to us, and the movement that you just so beautifully showed us. And the invitation to everybody as well is that on May 16th, when we're live at the Pier on Sunday evening for our last event of the Kumah Festival, Dava will come and perform with Mike, inspired. I think the work that she's going to present to us will be inspired by this piece, and she will lead us in a ritual as well, a breathing ritual, a ritual of remembrance. Sure, many of you would like to do. I think at this point, let me see, just give me a second. Yeah, so you know what I'd like to do, just briefly, can we bring Sarah back, please? So it's the three of us. Hi, you two. And I just wanted, this has to be quick because we really don't have a lot of time, but I know, Sarah, that you, I know you definitely have a question for Dava. I wanted each of you to be able to ask a question briefly to each other, to engage with each other. And if we can do this quickly, then maybe you can each do it with each other. So Sarah, do you want to start?
Sure. I have one about process and one about place. Which one do you want, Dava?
Why don't you ask both, and then maybe I'll see if the answer could like intersect.
All right, cool. So process-wise, I wanted to ask, like, let's talk about the inception of your projects. Hearing about For C.J, it's such a like deeply layered symbolic world, and what we saw as well. And I just wonder, where do you begin? Are you someone who starts from movement, or do you start from ideas, or something in between?
And then what's the other question?
The other question is about place. And so for me, and Maia touched on this a little bit, as a DIY producer, I'm interested in the logistics and the realities of how dancers make their work and their lives. And today we're like a little bit untethered from place and location thanks to Zoom. But I just want to know where you make your work. Is there a studio or a place that's a physical home for your practice?
Cool. Well, it always starts with an idea. So I think of myself as a scholar. So I do a crap of research. So all of my pieces have bibliographies that are like, obnoxious. So that's kind of my methodology. Is I envision work. I think of myself a little bit like a scientist, and the way that scientists have a hypothesis, and then they do the research, and then they come up with their conclusion, and then they do their presentation. So mine usually takes the form of a dance piece. And the dance studio is my mind. So most of the time I don't have like a physical space. It's like I dream up the dance parameters. So not like the literal steps, but the world. So I dream of the world, I dream of the layers, I dream of how to tell the story that connects the dots between all of the research that I've done. And then whether that's the Zoom space, which that's what it's been recently, or it's a residency, or, renting space, or using my basement, or, just kind of the park. What's available depending on the situation has been the space. But yeah, I'm not like a rooted person at the moment. But yeah, would it be a good time to ask my question? Oh, we can't hear you, Maia.
Yes, thank you. That would be great. Thank you so much.
Okay, cool. So thanks for those questions. I had a bunch of questions that came up, but I guess I wanted to know, if that's okay with you, I'll ask a couple of questions, and maybe you can find like some happy medium. The first question that came to mind is, we talked previously about improvisation and how marginalized it is, for the lack of a better word. So do you feel that post-COVID, because Zoom and technology are being a lot more integrated into the world of dance, dance film is a lot more accessible, do you feel that improvisation has had an upper leg, or more acceptance into the space? So, just to give you a little context, me, with the hats that I wear when I teach, I've chosen to stop teaching choreography over Zoom because it's just frustrating. And the only thing I've done is always done things rooted in improvisation, because I just feel like it's way more successful. And it utilizes the technology instead of pretend that it's not there, which I think it's weird. It's like having a person in the room, the elephant in the room, and you just ignore it. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, has anyone ever asked you about exploitation in terms of like, so your multiple identities and whether or not engaging in them depending upon your setting, you know, does anybody ever question, or do you yourself ever question yourself and say like, okay, well, I have these identities, how much am I using them or exploiting them or not? You know what I mean? I don't know if that's a clear question. And these two questions are like here. I don't know how you
Yeah,
And
they're very different. I don't know.
we only have a couple minutes. I'm so sorry, but great questions. Please continue, Sarah.
Okay, I think the fastest way is to say the first answer is no and the second answer is yes. I have not experienced, but maybe it will come, all the babies you're teaching, some kind of rising of improvisation. In fact, I feel that film is usually very set. I have a film coming out May 6th for Dance Now, and I was so terrified because film, you have to like, you write a shot list. I don't know. I don't write a shot list when I perform. Yeah, I don't know. Improvisation continues to struggle its way forward. I like this. I like the hope that the more people are learning the craft, because it is really a craft, and that's something that I think is often lacking when folks attempt it. And then on identities, I mean, yeah, yes, there's exploitation and there's joy on both sides, which I'm sure you also have experienced in your own identities. Yeah, the clearest example I can think of is when I was a kid, my Girl Scout troop like pulling me aside and saying, can we put you down as Asian? Because we need to, you know, it's in Illinois, we need to like show some diversity. So, you know, there's those kinds of things where sometimes, and it's actually happened, people of color do it too. Like, let me call you, let me put you on in this group now when I want you there and not when I don't want you there. That's happened quite a lot. So it's a complicated thing for sure, but very perceptive question.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, Dava and Sarah. This has really been a privilege. And I know that we're all going to be eager to, there's your train going by, yay, and Sarah's, yes, that's the train out her window. We will be watching you and eager to follow your careers forward and your work. And so thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. It's been very special for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I now have the honor of letting you know what's coming up in for the rest of the festival. In our final 3 weeks of this incredible festival, it's an honor to announce next week's event, which is the Young Curators Evening. These are not just any young curators; they are artists and activists in their own right, and they all have grown up in the Shul. What a tremendous moment this is for us as we watch this first generation come of age and return to bring us such a rich evening. So new Shul members, Talia Feldberg, Haley Gawanta, and Avia Hernstadt, who happens to be my daughter, will take us on a deep dive into the politics, ritual, and artistry of food. So here we go back to food, Sarah. Join us in exploring the how and why of what we eat through a participatory ritual led by artist Ampersand, and a panel discussion featuring Carrie Brody of Emma's Torch, artist Deborah Fishman, and Willa Shake of the Green Hill Food Co-op. For this evening, believe it or not, this is true, please bring a cabbage to the event. Ampersand will guide us through the process of making sauerkraut in our kitchens as she immerses us in the process on a microbial, scientific, cultural, historical, and spiritual level, an evening not to be missed. And then after that, the following event is Friday, May 7th. This event will ask the question, what is the symbol of Jewish redemption in our generation? It'll be a focus on visual imagery with Rabbi Misha and artists Suzanne Tick and Cody Humans. Our final event on Sunday, May 16th, which I've been speaking about, is actually at Pier 45, not 65, in Manhattan on the Hudson River, featuring a live performance with Davalois Firon, her collaborator, saxophonist, and composer Mike McGinnis, along with the creation of a collaborative work of art led by artist and new Shul member Suzanne Tick. So please join us for all of these events. And once again, so sorry that the video didn't work. We checked it last night, it did. And I want to thank Executive Director Susan Myers and her tech team. In spite of our issues, thank you so much. We couldn't be doing this festival without you. And I'll turn it over to Misha.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you, Dava, and thank you, Sarah, for this wonderful evening. Thank you so much. We're going to we got two more things to do here tonight. We're gonna say the Kaddish, the mourner's Kaddish, and then we're gonna get a closing number from Frank London again. So tonight, I think I'm thinking at least about Dante Wright. May he rest in peace, whose funeral was yesterday. And I invite you, if you are thinking of anyone in particular, to please speak their name or put the name in the chat. And if you are in mourning, I invite you to please rise. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי, וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל, ואמרו אמן. And I pass it on to Frank London for another piece of trumpet. יישר כוח, תודה רבה. Thank you, everybody, for this amazing evening. Thank you so much, Maya, Sarah, Dava, Frank. Everybody said the blessings at the beginning. Toda rabba, Shabbat Shalom. We'll see you again next Friday night. Shabbat Shalom.
One, two, three, four. Kumah, 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 Elohim. 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 שופטי הארץ, שופטי הארץ, שופטי, שופטי, שופטי הארץ, שופטי, שופטי, שופטי הארץ. מקום, 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 אלוהים. מקום, 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 אלוהים. שופטי הארץ, שופטי הארץ, שופטי, שופטי, שופטי הארץ, שופטי, שופטי, שופטי הארץ. שופטי הארץ, שופטי הארץ, שופטי, שופטי, שופטי הארץ, שופטי, שופטי, שופטי הארץ. שופטי הארץ, שופטי הארץ, שופטי, שופטי, שופטי הארץ, שופטי, שופטי, שופטי הארץ. מקום, 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 האלוהים. מקום, 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 האלוהים.